Jean-Claude Trichet is the former ECB President and former Governor of the Banque de France. He's with me from Paris. Let's deal with that first. The speed under the new regimes, if you will, where chat groups, people can withdraw money using their phones, it's sped up the possibility of a run on banks, which doesn't allow policymakers really the luxury of being time to consider what to do.
Yes, indeed, Richard. We are in a new world in comparison with 29 or with many crises of the past. But we know that since Northern Rock, we know that since Lehman Brothers. And of course, we have a vivid example of the financial sphere being a global village with SVB on the one hand, Credit Suisse on the other hand, connecting, if I may, through contagion or through a little bit of panic, quasi-immediately. Fortunately, Richard, as you know, the authorities were very swift also in line, of course, with this new world where we are, and the Fed, the FDIC, the authorities in the US and in Switzerland took decisions that were very bold, very rapid, but it was of the essence, of course.
So people like myself have been broadcasting all week and always answering the question, is this a major crisis? And I always start off by saying it's not 2008 all over again. The rot hasn't gone through the entire financial system. But, Mr. President, we can talk ourselves into a crisis by creating a self-fulfilling prophecy here, can't we?
No, it's true. And it is also true, obviously, that we are in a fragile financial sphere because we have accumulated, obviously, a lot of outstanding credit, public and private, since Lehman Brothers. And we have also a world which is, of course, much less favorable from the standpoint of interest rates than it was during the last 10 years, since since inflation came back with a vengeance. So all that being said, vigilance is of the essence in this world. No complacency of any kind should be accepted. And that is very important because it means that all the rules and regulations of Basel III, for instance, for the banks, should be fully respected. Were not fully respected, I have to say, in the case of the regional banks in the United States of America. The net stable funding ratio was not respected. There was some kind of waiver. But that being said, we are living in a world which is fragile. And it calls, as I said, for a lot of vigilance. But that being said, I don't trust that the sequence in which we are today will be the equivalent of Lehman Brothers. And one of the main reasons is that the authority know that we are in a fragile world. In the case of Lehman Brothers, you might remember that there was the full acceptance of the fact that the authorities would not intervene at the very beginning. And we had a full-fledged bankruptcy with all the consequences that we all know. So we are in a different world, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean that we can be complacent.
This issue of moral hazard, I'm aware it's a harsh concept, but the reality is the moment for whatever justifiable reasons, the moment the authorities said everybody in SVB will be made whole, you are de facto saying banking crises will always pay out the customers because, you know, never mind the widows and orphans. The argument here was there's too many small businesses who've got wages to meet. Well, that's the same in every banking failure. There are too many small businesses over the deposit insurance. So moral hazard is a thing of the past.
No. And again, as you know, in the case of SVB, if I'm not misled, of course, there has been generalization of the guarantee for all deposits, including the non-insured deposit. But of course, the owners of stocks and shares have a real, I would say, loss. And this is for real, of course. So again, we have to be very cautious and prudent. Maybe things could have been done better, with some difference made between the insured deposits and the uninsured deposit. We have to reflect on that. And your remark on moral hazard is absolutely clear. It's a very, very important remark. But there are ways, in my opinion, for the authorities to not to embark in moral hazards, I would say, horizon, but also to be able to avoid the catastrophe, because the catastrophe would be much worse, of course. And again, I don't criticize what has been done on both sides of the Atlantic in the cases at point.
Sir, I'm grateful to you, as always. Thank you for joining us. Have a lovely weekend. Very kind of you. Thank you. Jean-Claude
Thank you
Trichet.
very much indeed, Richard. All the best. Bye-bye.
All the best. Thank you. Coming up next.